Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Be sure to check the show notes and grab your free copy of the True Wellness Checklist so you can get started on your journey to true wellness right away. Now, let's get started. Okay, guys, what if the most powerful medicine isn't a supplement or a superfood or a protocol, but your mind? What if the root cause of burnout, imbalance, and stuckness isn't your hormones or your diet or your stress, but the way that your mind responds to all of it? In today's episode of True Wellness with Dr. D, we're flipping the script on healing. We're diving into the untapped potential of mental conditioning, where the battlefield of true wellness is fought and won right between your ears. My guest today is someone who's built his life on high stakes performance, not just on the outside, but from the inside out. He's trained elite warriors, led men through the fire, and sat in deep stillness with himself. This isn't about hacks or hype. It's about radical self-leadership. And if you're ready to stop outsourcing your power and start training your mind like your life depends on it, because it does, then this conversation will change everything. Welcome, Mark Divine. I am really excited for today's podcast and to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, man, it is an honor, Dr. D, and I love the intro. Wow. Trademark that one.
It's right on, right? It's straight on target. The battle is between our two ears. You guys,
that is the primary battleground, actually. And everything you see outside yourself is just a projection of that, right? So if you have a controlled mind and you can create the internal peace, doesn't matter what's going on outside of you, right? You're going to be squared away.
Yeah, that's so true. You guys, Commander Mark Divine is a retired Navy SEAL. He's a best-selling author and the visionary behind Unbeatable Mind, SEALFIT, as well as the Courage Foundation. He's got an MBA from NYU. By the way, I do too. Go Stern.
Congratulations. Go Stern.
Yes. And a black belt in, is it Sado karate?
Sado. I've actually got 4 different backgrounds. That's my near and dear to my heart because that's where I started the study of mental development with Zen practice under the tutelage of the founder of Sado, Mr. Tadashi Nakamura. Amazing. My first real mentor.
I love that. I love that. Believe it or not, Mark, I have a brown belt in karate that I earned when I was living in Japan.
Good. Wow. Authentic. Straight to the source. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. I'm like, one of these days I'm going to get back there. I'm so going to get back there when I'm not juggling all the kids and doing all that stuff, right? But you guys, Mark has really mastered the art of blending elite performance with that deep inner mastery. He has trained thousands of warriors, military, corporate, and civilians alike, right, to push past those perceived limits and awaken what he calls the 20x potential. We're going to talk about that. That's the ability to do 20 times more than you think you ever can. After leaving a high-powered Wall Street career to become a SEAL, Mark discovered that the true battlefield is within. And he now teaches others how to win that inner war using mental toughness, breath control, emotional resilience, and that spiritual alignment. So his books, which you want to grab a hold of, I've got the Unbeatable Mind right here in front of me. I'm making my sons read it because it is highly powerful. Actually, I stole this off my son's desk this morning. So he's got that, The Way of the SEAL and Staring Down the Wolf. And there's a wolf on here. You'll have to tell us the story about the wolves. Sure. He's transformed leaders basically across the globe. And from Wall Street to the battlefield to the meditation cushion, Mark's mission is clear. Master your mind, elevate your life, and lead with courage. So let's get ready to learn how to train the mind, reclaim your power, and live with unshakable purpose. So, Mark, tell me about the wolves. Tell me about the weight wolf. Tell me about the wolf on Unbeatable Mind. Lots of wolf imagery here.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's the title of one of my books, Staring Down the Wolf, obviously references it. When I started training Navy SEALs in 2006, like I was a SEAL active duty starting in 1989. You referenced it. I left Wall Street where I had an MBA, and I was a certified public accountant as well. And the story of why that happened really ties into what we're talking about, because I started studying Zen under that watchful eye of Mr. Nakamura. Basically the same month I started my MBA and started working on Wall Street. And I was looking for something that was comprehensive. I was an athlete, a competitive athlete. At college I swam competitively, and I was a triathlete. But there was something about the martial arts that I had noticed at Colgate. There was a black belt, or my freshman roommate came in, and he was kind of a jerk as a freshman, right? He was real nasty and picked on the girls below us, and just silly things. But he started studying karate, and I was a swimmer, and so we kind of went our separate ways. But I watched him while I was at Colgate, and by the time he was a senior, he had gotten his black belt in Shotokan. And this guy had completely transformed into this really poised and respectful and disciplined man. He was completely ripped. And he was heading off to Japan to teach English and to continue his martial arts studies. So anyways, I go off to New York City, and that lodged in my head like a little brain bug. I said, what? Because I was 4 years older, but I spent my time drinking, chasing women, and swimming at Colgate, and I mustered a 2.8. And by the grace of God, I got a job with Coopers and Lybrand. I have no idea how and why. They hired me, but they did. So anyways, I don't want to make this story too long, but I found that martial art thinking there's got to be something about that is more than just physical. I didn't know what it was. And sure enough, I found that through the katas and the movements and the breath work that there was some development going on. But then I noticed one Thursday night, I stayed for the black belt class. I want to see the black belts do their thing. And after class, everyone kind of left except for a small group, about 10 people, and Nakamura lit a candle, and they dragged these little wooden benches over into a corner. And I'm like, I asked them, I said, what the heck are they doing? Like, are they part of a cult or something?
Right.
And the guy said, no, that's the Zen class. And I said, what is Zen? Now, this is 1985. What is Zen? And the guy said, well, it's kind of hard to explain. There's a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by a guy named Suzuki. Maybe you could read that. So I got the book. I read it. I didn't understand a word of it, but it was all about mental training the mind, training the spirit, integration, the whole mind, right? Talking about awakened awareness. And I was like, what? I didn't know anything about all that, but it was intriguing to me because I knew there was something more that I was missing. So I asked Nakamura if I could do the Zen class. I was the only white belt. And he said, sure. So I started studying Zen, and I really loved it. And I understand now why. Because most people don't like meditating, but I understood why now. And we can get into that if you like later. But Dr. D, it completely transformed my life. Like it took time, right? Mind you, like meditation it's a slow, methodical, like chipping away at the ego and laying bare the truth of the story that you've been living. So it laid bare the truth of the story that I was living. And I was like, that story is not my story. Like I had no business being a certified public accountant, auditing books. I wasn't inspired by it. I wasn't inspired and motivated by money. I didn't really, I wasn't inspired by the people I was around. God bless them. I didn't like being in a suit. I didn't like being inside all day long. There was all these things that I just looking at that story. I'm like, hey, that's not my story. And this is like the turning point in my life. I like to say I had my midlife crisis at 22 years old. Because then it exposed this gaping gap, like, holy shit, what am I doing? Why am I barreling down this road? And what an incredible gift to be able to get that insight before you have family and mortgages and all these obligations. Right. And so then the second incredible thing was it caused me to take up a journaling practice. This is again before journaling became a thing. And so through journaling, I learned to ask questions. I said, okay, if that's not my story, then what is? And then the perennial or most dangerous question, who am I really? Like, who am I really?
Yes.
And then to get to that question, you have to go deep within. You have to get extremely quiet. And the meditation led me there. And I started practicing every morning. I got myself one of those wooden benches. So every morning I'd go for my 6-mile run around Prospect Park. I was in Manhattan or in Brooklyn, living in Brooklyn, and come back and I would do my box breathing, which I now teach to the SEALs. And then I would just sit in silence and practice my Zen. And I got really good at being quiet. My mind, what they call the monkey mind, started to settle down. And then I would ask questions. Who am I really? What's my mission? Why am I on this planet? And I started to get some answers. And it came in the form of just a sensation or a feeling of being a warrior.
Powerful.
I didn't feel like a warrior at that moment. I didn't feel like a warrior as a CPA, Not that, you couldn't be, right? There's plenty of them, but that wasn't my story. So then I started to ask, well, if I'm meant to be a warrior, then how? And, synchronicity is where, when things line up, like when you're getting close to your own truth, magic starts to happen. And one day I was walking home from work and I passed this Navy recruiting office and I didn't even know it was a Navy recruiting office, but I saw this poster kind of facing the street. And the poster had the words, "Be someone special." And then the imagery was Navy SEALs, but they didn't say anything about the SEALs. And I didn't know anything about the SEALs at the time. In 1987, by now, it's like pretty secret organization. And, but I was like, whoa, look at that. There's a guy doing free fall parachuting and, a couple divers coming out of the water with their weapons, it's stuff you expect. You now know, you see that imagery all the time. Anyways, I could tell this story forever because it's fascinating, but and all the synchronicities that happened, but I ended up knowing that was my path. That was how I was going to serve as a warrior initially. Right. So I applied, they tried to deter me. They said, don't even try. Like nobody gets in.
Yay.
You're CPA and you're a civilian, right? So all the SEALs come from the Naval Academy or Reserve Officer Training. They're already in the Navy.
Yes.
And occasionally they take one from the civilian world. And I said, well, I'm going to be that one. And so we put in a package and 9 months later, sure enough, I got accepted to go through officer candidate school directly to SEAL training, which is very rare. Mm-hmm. So 1989, check this out. I got my MBA. November of 89, I got my MBA. I finished up my CPA, got my certificate. I passed my black belt showdown test, which was a real doozy.
Yeah.
Then I left it all behind and went to officer candidate school, became a Navy SEAL. So that's what really began me, put me on the journey. When I went through BUDS, so there I am, 185. BUDS is SEAL training, basic underwater demonstration SEAL training. So I show up there after officer candidate school, April 1990. 185 like hardcore guys have been training for a long time for this.
Yes.
And me, right? So, well, I made 185, so 184 others.
And what's the passing stats for those?
Less than 10%. So 9 months later, there were 19 of us left.
Okay.
And I was number one. I was number one graduate, the honor man of my class. And my entire small team, we call a boat crew, that I started with on the first week, got through with me. The chances of that happening are like almost infinitesimal. I don't think it's ever happened because there's always people dropping and rotating in and out. But the reason for that is 100% attributable to the mental training that I got under Nakamura's watchful eye. The ability to control my arousal response and stay calm, in the midst of the intense pressure of the training where they're trying to break you. Yes. And my ability to concentrate and radically focus, that all came from meditation. My ability to stay present and be helpful and useful and caring for my team and to help them, like put my eyes on them and take them off me. So the diminishment of my ego to make it not about me, but my team in the midst of that challenging situation was incredible. And that's what gave me so much energy. Like that's the root of 20X right there, is when you can offer support and service to others, you leave a carbon copy of that goodness on yourself.
Yeah. Right? Contribution.
So sure. That was incredible. And then I had very similar success as a leader and all attributed, right? And so I kept on doing my training, got more interested in sports psychology, was already an avid visualizer. So really taking 4 primary skills and just really refining and honing them and learning how to teach them. right? And those skills are working with the breath to develop arousal control and attention control, and then deepening your powers of concentration so you can radically focus and, go deep, deep, deep without distraction, so you become less distractible. And then working with your mind to be able to see the outcomes that you desire and to develop a future vision for your roadmap for your story. And that takes a lot of practice, but it's incredibly powerful, as you know.
Yes.
And then also the ability to simplify and chunk everything down so that you really know what's the right thing to do right now and not get overwhelmed. Kind of the metaphor of like eating one bite of the elephant at a time.
Yes.
All of these are practices, right? There's skills, but when you put them together and you work them together moment to moment to moment, which is a form of mindfulness, like a mindfulness with applied action, you get extremely powerful results. So I got motivated through my SEAL career to teach other SEALs this stuff because they didn't teach this stuff in the SEALs. It's funny, people read the way of the SEAL and they think, oh, the SEALs taught me all those skills. No, that was the way of this SEAL.
Right.
And now, it's really cool. It's gratifying that I've taught so many SEALs that now they're become SEAL instructors, and they've started to implement what I call the Unbeatable Mind practices at SEAL training and also in the Air Force Pararescue and Army Special Forces. So they're now teaching breath control, visualization, these skills, mindfulness, yoga even. You'll laugh about this, but I tried to teach yoga to SEALs who are training to become SEALs back in 2006. And they would literally just roll their eyes at me. And some of them wouldn't even step foot into my studio. Because I had this huge integrated training center in Encinitas, California. I had like the equivalent of a CrossFit gym. I had the yoga studio. I had the martial arts gym. And I had this big 5,000 square foot open area ringed with pull-up bars. We call it the grinder. Very, modeled after the SEAL grinder, Bud's grinder. And some of them wouldn't step foot in the studio because they said it's against their religion, which is hilarious. But because they didn't really understand. So what I did, I built that into Unbeatable Mind. I called it integrated movement. I said, this is really important, guys. This is going to help save you, right? It's going to make you more durable, more flexible, both body and mind. And this is where we brought in the breath work. So, I had them do breathing. I didn't call it, I think once I called it pranayama and they almost ran on me. And so we're just going to call this box breathing. We're going to control our breathing. And here's why it's valuable, right? It's going to calm your mind down. It's going to trigger the arousal response, or actually cause you to not trigger the arousal response when you want to. And you're going to be calm and focused in combat. This will save your life. And they're like, okay, yeah, tell us more.
Yeah.
So I started teaching SEALs.
You frame it, right? You just got to frame it.
So reframe it, right. I called it taking the foo out of the kung fu.
There you go. But that's so powerful. I mean, I think many of our listeners are fighting invisible battles. I mean, I think we all are, all throughout our lives. I mean,
That's
some
what
people,
it means to be human. You come here to fight the invisible battle so you can grow and evolve. That's like your ultimate purpose, is to evolve.
Yeah. So, I mean, like fatigue, overwhelm, disconnection from our bodies. How can we begin to build that same inner resilience without being in the combat situation or without being in your boot camp training? How can our listeners actually take this into their life on a daily basis?
Yes, a great question. And there's multiple ways I can answer it. First off, just to recognize that the answer lies within you, right? If it's chaos out there, it's because there's chaos in here.
I love that.
And people are freaking out about politics and what's going on. I'm just fascinating. Like, it's just great entertainment. You don't even need Netflix anymore.
Just look at the news.
just watch the news or read the newspaper. And people are getting all jacked up, regardless of which side you're on and whatever. And that's just ridiculous. It's silly because you can't do anything about it. It's just a great play. It's what the yogis call the dance of Lila, the dance of life. And it's always going to be that way, right? Yes. Sometimes, things swing your way and you're like, oh, everything's great. Sometimes swing the other way and you're like, oh my God, everything's disaster. Just wait, it'll swing back the other way. The question is, and everyone's heard this, is what's your story? How are you responding to that? And if you can't maintain control and have a non-attached or a curiously detached attitude toward that, where you're looking at it as like a play with humor and like fascination,
Yes.
then you're going to get swept up in it. And if you're swept up in it, then what you've done is you've collapsed into your thoughts and emotions, and you're taking them as real.
Mm. Yeah,
So the primary benefit.
I have a visual in my mind. It's like if your base isn't solid, you're kind of weeping with the
You're
wind
all
in
over the
whatever
place.
direction it goes.
You're like, imagine your thoughts and emotions like wild stallions.
Mm-hmm.
You're just sitting on top of that thing, and you're just getting whiplash all over the place. And then you don't have any control where that stallion's going to take you. You know what I mean? And it will probably throw you off.
Yeah.
Whereas slowing down, to answer your question directly, is to slow down and to sit, to dedicate time every day to just sit and to watch what's going on, right? But this is not easy, right? This is why, because that's what mindfulness is. People fail. Like 99% of Americans fail at mindfulness. They just sit and think. Now, slowing down and sitting and thinking will have some physiological benefits, as you know. It will, but it's not going to train your mind. So what I learned is there's some prerequisites to be able to calm and still your mind. And the first is physical health.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't, so I'm preaching to the choir. If your body is not healthy, your brain is not healthy. If your brain is not healthy, your thoughts aren't going to be healthy.
So true.
So you've got to have a foundation of physical health to begin any type of mental development. And that physical training in itself begins the training of the mind. And anyone who's involved in athletics or somatic training, like martial art, like you or some of your listeners, or Tai Chi or yoga or Qigong, the movement, the integrated movement where you're synchronizing the movement in a pattern, like a dance or a kata.
Yes.
Or as simple as just standing there and breathing in with your arms going out, in, breathing out with your hands coming in. The integration of the breath and the movement is training the mind, because you're now focused on that one pattern. And by focusing on the one pattern, you're practicing attention control. You're controlling your attention, which makes you less distractible. So that's a practice. You practice controlling your attention on that one thing, breathing in, breathing out, and moving your arms, or breathing in, breathing out, and rowing, or breathing in, breathing out, and doing the squat. And that's all you do. You just focus on that, and you're training attention control. And then the longer you do that, you develop your power of concentration, which is akin to like really gathering up all the energy that you're throwing out all these different ways, and you're holding it in this controlled pattern, and that strengthens your mind. It's like, imagine a difference between the power of water that's flowing through 1,000 tributaries, right? It's going to be like not moving at all, versus a very narrow channel. It's going to be flowing, with rapids. So you want your mind to have the power of that narrow channel, and you direct that channel of energy wherever you want it, like a flashlight instead of a floodlight. So just by training the body thoughtfully, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean like sitting on a Peloton reading the newspaper. You know what I mean? Or the tablet. That's not training the mind. That is going to bring some health benefits, but not training the mind. So training the body gives you a healthy mind, and it's going to develop arousal control, attention control, and concentration. Mm-hmm. But the next secret weapon is just using the breath, right? So when you're in a seated position, don't think you're going to meditate. Just sit down and breathe. And you're going to breathe through your nose. You're going to breathe deeply. You're going to engage your diaphragm and relax the belly. And you're going to hold your breath. And then you're going to exhale, get all the air out, and you're going to hold your breath. And I call that box breathing. It can be 3 count in, 3 count hold, 3 count out, 3 count hold, 4 count. My prescribed goal, end state, is 5 count. You don't need to do any more. 5 count in, that's 5 seconds in, 5 seconds hold, 5 seconds out, 5 seconds hold. Yes. Now, this is extraordinary because you're breathing through your nose. Because you want the breath. The nose is for breathing. The mouth is for eating and speaking.
Yes.
You want the breath to be split, right, and slowed down, right, because that then allows you to get deep into your lungs, and it activates the diaphragm, which then allows the breath and that motion to massage the vagus nerve, which you know about, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So that right there is going to alleviate the burnout and the anxiety and the stress, and actually will help you lose weight. And like, if you just move your body a little bit every day and just sit down and box breathe for 20 minutes, you'll get into optimal homeostatic balance probably within 9 months to a year. Yeah. So most people are stuck in hyperarousal, as you know, which leads to burnout. And it's because the pathway for the parasympathetic nervous system actually atrophies. It literally goes offline. And
That's overused.
That's
That's
right.
overused.
Yeah, it's because the sympathetic is overused. And so you have to, now they have devices. I actually got a device that kind of goes around the back of the neck and it stimulates the vagus nerves. And not the vagus nerve, but the ganglion nerves, which connect to the vagus. It's helpful, but there's nothing like box breathing. That's the master skill.
And it's
so what we're doing here, but one other point on box breathing, why five count in, 5 count hold, 5 count out, 5 count hold? That's a 20-second breath, which means you're only doing 3 breaths per minute. Well, guess what? When you practice this over a long period of time, you're retraining your breathing pattern automatically to breathe slowly 5 count in and 5 count out when you're not doing the holds, right? So now if you're breathing in 5 and out 5, I teach that to the SEALs. We call it the tactical breath. You want to see a SEAL going into a firefight. Most people are like, and the SEAL's going, right? Acquiring targets, nice and calm. And that is 6 breaths per minute. And the research is out literally just 2 years ago. The 6 breaths per minute is the ideal breathing pattern for health and longevity. How cool is that?
That's super cool.
That since 2006. And we just kind of stumbled upon that.
That's great validation. But how easy is that for us to all be able to do, to just bring that consciousness and that awareness each breath?
You're breathing anyways. People say, Mark, I don't have time for your practice. I'm like, well, what are you doing for that 20 minutes anyways? Well, yeah, I'm breathing, but I'm doing other things. Well, are those things effective? Are those things leading you to complete balance, peace of mind, harmony, happiness? No. Okay. Then maybe you do have 20 minutes and you're going to breathe anyway. So why don't you just sit there and box breathe? And what will happen is your mind will start to get really clear and calm because, right, it's just settling down. Now, so you've developed arousal control, attention control, and concentration just through a little bit of movement every day and through a box breathing practice, 20 minutes in the morning, ideally 20 in the morning, 20 in the afternoon or evening.
Well, the beauty of that is you're training your body so that whenever you're in these situations, it's now automatic. It's your automatic
That's right.
pattern. So you're practicing that just like martial arts over and over and over again. So you get to the point where you're no longer thinking about it. It's already there.
Right. Your natural breathing pattern will become 6 breaths per minute through the nose, and you'll always be calm.
Yeah.
And that leads you. So those are all the prerequisites. And if you stop there, you've just changed your life dramatically for the better. But the real sea change comes because of that calm, focused mind. Now you can have some success with mindfulness because mindfulness is the ability to sit there and just witness what's going on. And so when you start that practice, you're like, oh, look, there's thinking going on. There's hearing going on. Now there's feeling going on. And then what happens is you have this sudden realization that those things are happening and you are watching them. So who's you? Whereas before you used to think I am the thoughts, I am the emotions, I am this body.
Right.
But with mindfulness or witnessing, suddenly you're like, wait a minute, I am not these thoughts, I am not these emotions, I am not this body.
Yes.
Wow. So now you've created that space to where instead of being on that stallion, being, thrown over the cliff, all caught up in the drama, whatever it is. And usually it's some sort of relational drama, health drama, financial drama, or political drama, fear-based stuff. You just look at that and be like, oh, what an interesting story. But I don't have to buy into that story.
That's right. You get to be a fly on the wall.
You get to watch it and say, wow, interesting. Look at all those people caught up in their stories. Because that's the natural, that's the normal, the common human state. Right. By the way, my latest book is called Uncommon. Common is to be caught up in your thoughts and emotions and to mistake yourself for them. Uncommon is to be able to just witness them with an aloof curiosity and be like, oh, that's fascinating. Look at that. Now, if there's something going on from a deeply rooted pattern, and this is, even an enlightened sage has patterns, right? Based upon their conditioning, their training, the culture, language, everything. Like, and I grew up in a alcoholic, rageaholic, deeply dysfunctional family. And so of course that affected me and I had to I've gone through a lot of therapy. I had to figure out how that was affecting my behavior so I didn't hurt other people. But I could do that and still watch it. The fact that I could watch it, I could see it. I could see what triggered those patterns. And then I could go to work on kind of rooting out or maybe creating other patterns that overrode those, like cognitive behavioral therapy teaches. So it doesn't mean suddenly just because you become mindful and witnessing that you turn into a saint. It does not.
No,
You still got to do the work. You still got to do
the magic fingers, right?
Yeah,
That was nice.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah.
There's beauty in the work, right? Like actually going through the work allows us to get to the other side of the journey. And then, I mean, I do think that's where growth comes.
100%. Yeah. Growth happens in a transcendent include manner, right? You know, that's why you call it a paradigm shift or an aha moment,
Yes.
You become a little bit more aware. You're doing your practice, you're doing your work, you're getting healthier. And suddenly, something gets revealed to you. I call them loops, fear loops. You're like, oh my God, look at that. Loops just keeps getting triggered and triggered and triggered. And I keep dropping these little hand grenades. Stop doing that. Well, okay. So in order to stop doing it, I can attack it behaviorally, but that only goes so far as right? So you really got to attack it at its root.
Hey, this is Dr. D. I just wanted to remind you that you can get started on your true wellness journey. Go ahead and check the show notes and grab a link to the True Wellness Checklist. Now, let's get back to the episode.
And the root is the trauma, is the childhood pattern that was made sense at the time to keep you safe, but it's not serving you as an adult. So you've got to kind of get in, become your own archaeologist, excavate that, and get to the root of it.
Exactly. You say in your book, and this is a quote, right? We suffer more in our imagination than in reality.
Mm-hmm.
In this line, it's really hard, right? Because for people who are constantly stuck in the trauma, right? Fearing the worst about their bodies, their future, their healing, their life. How do they bring a stop to that suffering from the story and actually come back to the truth? Get to be that fly on the wall versus the person on the stallion.
Yeah. There's two ways. One is really painful and the other just takes time. Okay. So the painful way is to face a serious crisis and to wake up from it. So a lot of people face cancer, death of a loved one, like a child or, really close family member or spouse, or a major accident, loss of a limb, something like that. And they have to face this new reality. And so coming to grips with your own mortality tends to shift your perspective dramatically to where you start to focus on the positive things and you focus on the good and to focus on what you have instead of what you don't have. Because, part of our culture is to always be grasping for what we don't have, but what we want or desire. And then people don't ever take a look at what they do have, like a healthy body, right? This opportunity as a human to grow and evolve, the relationships in the family, and what you do have is incredible. And even when it comes to developmental work, most people strive for the ideal and they're never happy with the progress. It's really important. So that's one way. And I don't recommend it necessarily. If it happens,
it happens.
Embrace it. If it happens, because we all have tragedy. If it happens, don't wait. Like we were saying before we started, don't waste the opportunity.
Right.
Don't waste it. Like I had this major snowmobile accident recently. I could easily have died. Flown into a tree at 40 miles an hour, broke my scapula in 18 places, broke 8 ribs, internal injury. If I had hit my head, I would have been dead. But I was given another chance. And so I'm like, I don't want to waste that.
Right.
Right. So there's incredible, I could be a victim. My story could be like, what an idiot. What was I driving for? Why was I even on this snowmobile? I didn't even like snowmobiles. I didn't even like the cold. It's 20 below zero, right? What a jerk the guy who invited me it was, or the guy who ran me off the trail. He didn't even stop. I literally I had a guy who was going to head on me and I'm the one that got out of the way. Like we're playing chicken. He didn't even stop. I could have been all mad at him, but no, I was like, no, that's not going to serve me at all. What's the opportunity here? The opportunity for me was to eat my own dog food and slow down and pay closer attention to what's changing for me? Because I think everyone's going through change right now, Dr. D. I'm not sure your clients all experience this.
Everybody. Yep.
There's massive change going on in our world, in our country, especially in our lives, and we're being called into bigger missions. People who aren't ready for this are checking out. I don't know if you notice how many people have been checking out. You know, we can blame it on COVID and the vaccines or everything, but I think it's like spirit's just like, okay, I'm done. I'm not ready for what's coming. So warriors need to step into the breach, and we're all warriors, especially if you're listening to this podcast. The second and more appropriate way to get control of that chaos in the mind is exactly what we've been talking about, is to slow down enough to sit down and take control of your mind. In other words, to train your mind. And I have the saying, if you're not training your mind, someone else is training it for you, and the results will speak for itself. So if you're distracted all the time and you're always on social media and you're always watching your emails and, nonstop texting, and if someone else is controlling your schedule and you feel out of control, it's because you're allowing yourself to be out of control, because your mind has been trained to give up control.
Yes.
And guess what? I believe that's deliberate. I believe all the training of all these marketers, they're well-versed in NLP, and they're well-versed in a lot of the principles that we're talking about, and they want your attention. They want your money. The government wants your attention. They want your money. They take 40% of it practically every year and throw it away to foreign countries, and all the crap that Doge is finding right now, just cracking me up. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. This whole thing is just this big corrupt engine. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but wow. Anyway, so I can get all upset about that, or I can be like, wow, that's fascinating. I hope we get that under control. If you're not training your mind, someone else is training it for you, and it's been trained since birth.
That's right.
Your mind is nothing but like this piece of clay. And the moment you open your eyes, it starts to get formed and shaped and trained. Language is part of it, culture, religion, government, politics, every word your family says, every emotion, it's all part of the training.
Yeah.
And so that creates this complex web of stories and patterns and conditions that you believe is you. And that's a false belief, because it's all just a bunch of training. It's all a bunch of conditioning. I call it your background of obviousness, like your operating system. So the only way to rewrite the code, right, is to sit down and become the programmer. You can't do it in motion, right? Like you can't fix computer code while it's running.
Right.
You have to, I've never used this metaphor before, but you have to stop the program and insert the new code and then run it again to test it. So sitting down and meditating is stopping the program so that you can reprogram your mind. And that means your reprogram is to take control. And not let anyone else anyone else control you or affect you.
Yeah. And I have some things written down here too that I wrote down for myself just from your book too, is the three big questions is, who are you? Why are you here? Right. And then are you living life like you mean it?
Right. That's great. I wrote that.
Yeah.
The most important job that everyone has, and people think, well, yeah, it's to take care of my family. No. Most important job is to figure out why you're here.
Yeah.
Some people go their whole life without really thinking they have a purpose. And I think that's kind of sad, right? I said this earlier, that your primary purpose as a human is to evolve. Even, and my belief is in reincarnation and cycles of birth and rebirth. But, it's not like Mark was reborn.
Right.
Mark exists this one time, this instantiation.
Yes.
But there is kind of like a bundle of energy and memories that does, or desires, I should say, that can, if the desire is strong enough, then a rebirth will happen. And so some of that latent energy will come into the next life, which will then infuse and inform that being to create certain challenges and to have a certain life. Yeah. So like if you're a real asshole, your next life may not be pretty. but it's still an opportunity to grow and evolve and to be less of an asshole, right? So that the next time, maybe you improve your conditions. So that's the primary purpose we have as humans, is to grow and evolve, like generically. But
Yeah.
since every one of us is absolutely and utterly unique, there's no two individuals that are alike. Every one of us then has a unique way that we're supposed to experience life so that we get the right lessons, so that we can grow and evolve. And there's
Yes.
two sides. So that the energy of that rebirth is called karma, right? It's like it's the it's the oomph that sends you in a certain direction and also
Mhm.
attracts certain challenges to you, right? That's
Yes.
karma. And the flip side of that karma is your calling, and they call that dharma. This is how you're supposed to show up, how you're supposed to serve, how you're supposed to be. And so,
Yeah.
like when I was sitting on the meditation bench, and I got that sense that and that signal that I was meant to be a warrior, and that came straight from my soul. And I say the heart. The heart is the center for the soul. That's where it all emanates from. The entire human projection is like a hologram that emanates out from the heart. And so
Yes.
that's why it's so important to not just meditate, but you got to get first clear the mind, and then open the heart. So the
Yeah.
heart becomes your mind, and the heart is a mind, but they don't want to be, you don't want them to be separate. Heart, that's why heart mind, the idea is so important. So when you connect your heart and your mind, then you begin to be able to listen and hear, like your
Yeah.
soul's calling, your soul's desires. And
Yeah.
so that archetype, it's an archetypal energy. It's never a doing thing. Like I didn't sit on that meditation bench and suddenly hear, oh, Mark, you're meant to be a Navy SEAL.
Right.
Warrior. It's that archetypal energy. So you want to inspiration, look at the Jungian archetypes or the Enneagram archetypes and be like, oh yeah, I'm really resonate with warrior, with teacher, right? With
Yes.
leader. Those are mine. And so that's how you're meant to serve. So anyways, back to the book. So I said, well, this is important. I want to help people understand that this is really important. So not only do we want to help them calm down and develop that concentration power, what I call double barrel power, concentration and arousal control, and then develop the capacity for mindfulness. But while we do that, we also want to begin to contemplate deeply, like, who am I and why am I on this planet? And there's three kind of words that came to me that are really help us kind of articulate that. And there's purpose, passion, and principles. And the purpose is like your overarching archetypal calling, warrior,
Right.
right? Warrior leader. In my clients, usually we boil this down to just a three or four words or a sentence. But
Yes.
it's not enough, because there's also something there's things you're passionate about and things you're not passionate about. Back to my early story, like I could have been a warrior as a CPA, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
there's CPAs who work for the CIA and FBI and they're warriors. I could have been a warrior as a CPA, but I wasn't passionate about it.
Right.
Right? What was I passionate about? Right? So I got to get clear. What am I not passionate about and good at? And what am I passionate about and love to do and love to be? And when I
Yeah.
think about that, it's like, oh man, I'm passionate about fitness. I'm passionate about adventure. I'm actually passionate about taking risks. That's like a
Yeah.
warrior. And so your purpose, let's say warrior, needs to then be combined or overlaid with your passions, or else you could be, kind of heading off in the wrong direction.
Right.
And then the third is, what are your principles? Right. And to be clear, right? Because a lot of your principles are part of your training and conditioning from growing up. Let's say you're like, well, I grew up as a Catholic, and so I'm principled about those principles. Are
Right.
you really? Right? Are you really? Right? Or are you just accepting the conditioning and the training from that childhood or that
That
program?
molded clay.
Right. So I had to really look at that, because I grew up and, my mom was religious and Episcopalian, and I'd have nothing against any of that stuff. But there was more to me than that. And there was some of that I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like
Yeah.
here's one of them. I didn't think I needed a religion between me and God.
Hmm.
And well, that was kind of flew in the face of what I learned. And so
Sure.
I had to get clear about what really are my principles. And so then you have this combination, right? And if you imagine them like a Venn diagram overlapping, these three circles overlap,
Yes.
purpose, passions, principles, right in the middle is a sweet spot. When you're
Yeah.
in alignment with your purpose, passion, and principles, then you're on target, right? If you're
Yeah.
out of alignment, any one of those, you'll either be burned out, right? Or you put at risk. Like if your principles are out of alignment with your passion and your purpose, then you're at risk, because you're going to do something possibly ethically or morally wrong, or something that breaches your code of ethics, your ethos.
Yes.
If let's say your principles and your purpose are in alignment, but you're not passionate about it. Let's say maybe things have changed. You used to be, but you're not anymore. Then you're going to get burned out.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing things they're not passionate about, and they're feeling really burned out. So you got to find a way to get in alignment with your passion. And if you're passionate about something and your principles are in alignment, but you're not on purpose, then you're going to have an existential crisis eventually, or you're going to go to your deathbed with a big regret, like a missed opportunity.
It makes sense that place where all those three circles come together, that's where you're unbeatable. That's where you're unstoppable. Right. But it takes some work to get there.
Right. And you know what? I realize I never answered your first question about the wolves. Because I got to the idea of teaching the SEALs, right? So when I taught the SEALs, one of the biggest challenges I faced, and I also faced this myself because of my upbringing, was negative dialogue, negative internal dialogue. Mm-hmm. Right. And the main thing that would cause SEAL trainees to quit is they start talking to themselves negatively. I can't do this. I'm too tired.
Oh, all the time, right? It happens to all of us.
Right? And you know the brain is wired to be negative 5 times much more than it's positive.
Survival mechanism.
So I used to tell them the story from the Native American tradition of the two wolves. You know, the grandfather would tell the kids, you know, hey, there's two wolves fighting for your attention. Mm-hmm. The fear wolf lives in your brain, your mind, and the courage wolf who lives in your heart. And they're always fighting. And the kid's like, well, which one wins, Grandpa? And he says, well, the one you feed the most.
Yes.
So in order to feed courage, you've got to say nice things to yourself and to other beings. And you got to begin to believe it, even if you don't initially. Stake your claim, stake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. This is where a positive mantra, I'm going through SEAL training. My mantra was, I'm feeling good. I'm looking good. I ought to be in Hollywood. I'm feeling good. I'm looking good. I ought to be in Hollywood. And I was inside my mind constantly, you know, because you would go out on a 6 or a 10 mile run. And of course the instructors like go out like a bat out of hell. And the class is struggling to keep up. And they're thinking like, holy shit, we're going to go. And they never tell you how far you're going to go unless it was like a timed run for, you know, for your grades or, you know, because we have to pass a certain level of time run, time swim, time obstacle course every week. And you had to beat your score every week. It's brutal. Mm-hmm. But on the longer runs, they wouldn't tell you. You don't know if you're going 5 miles, 7, 10, 15. You know how that plays in your mind. You just don't know.
Yes.
And they would use false summits, you know, like, all right, guys, we're, you know, there's the compound. We're going to finish the compound. And everyone's like, yeah, we're going to be done. And then they would just keep on going. And you see guys, their spirit just gets crushed and they just fall over because their internal dialogue is, I'm going to done. I can't do any more than this. And as soon as they get there, they stop thinking they're done, but they're not. And they can't get started again. So we would go out like a bat out of hell. And my thinking was, that instructor, no way he can keep this pace, right, for more than a mile. So it's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. So I'm going to keep up with this guy. And I got this. Feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. And that brought a smile to my face because I'm like, yeah, I may not feel good, but I can at least pretend.
Yes,
And then that with a slow breathing pattern, synchronized, inhale 3 steps, exhale 3 steps, inhale 3 steps, feeling good, looking good, ought to be in Hollywood. And what happens is your mind, right, just gets into this really a sweet flow state. And then the pain gets transmuted into power. Yeah. And next thing you know, the instructor slows down and I'm right there with a couple of other guys who had these skills. And I look back and the rest of the students are like strung out way back. And then we had what's called the goon squad, you know, so those people get really far behind. It gets worse for them because now the instructor's pulling up the rear, like circle them off and start running them like cattle in circles and in and out of the surf zone and doing push-ups, burpees. And then they make them catch up with the class.
Oh no.
And if this happens day after day, they're toast. They quit because they just get, they get farther and farther behind. Yeah. So feeding the courage wolf means talking positively to yourself. And one of the best ways to talk positively to yourself is to talk positively to others. I love Take your eyes off yourself, put them on there and say, come on, Joe, we got this. Let's do this. We're feeling good. Look, this is what I did with my small team. I just constantly encouraging them. I taught them to speak positive words to each other and to the team. I taught them to visualize what victory looked like on every evolution. And also that we would, you know, we practiced visualize seeing ourselves graduating. I taught them breath control, right, to
Mm-hmm.
stay calm and focused. And
Yes.
all these skills working together. And also I taught them every time we did something, like Hell Week is a great example. Like Hell Week is 6 days nonstop training, round the clock, no sleep. And
Oh,
most people quit within the first 50 hours because they can't imagine doing it for another 5 days or 4.5 days
right.
because they're already dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I taught my team is like, we're going to just do one thing at a time, right? If they say, okay, get in your little boats and row around Coronado Island, that's all we're going to do. We're going to get in our little boat and row around Coronado Island, and we're going to have fun doing it. And then we're just going to take a break because they're going to give us a break, and we're going to eat some food because they can't starve us. And then we're going to do the next thing. Mm-hmm. And, to stay really present. Feed the courage wolf. And guess what? If all you do is feed the courage wolf, what happens to the fear wolf? You starve it. Because, wherever you direct your attention, wherever energy goes, right, grows. So by putting your energy into positive thinking, positive thoughts, positive emotions, then that becomes your reality. It grows inside of you. And you're taking energy away or depriving the fear loops and the fear energy, of food. And suddenly that starts to loosen its grip over you. And you experience it less and less until eventually it goes away.
I love this because everything changes. And I think, Mark, I think this feeds in. We've talked about the 20x potential. We've mentioned it a couple times, but talk to us about that because I think this leads really well right into that.
Well, all of these skills, essentially, imagine, right, the untrained mind. First of all, it's scattered, right? And your energy is going all over the place. And it's going to distractions. It's going to negative people. It's going to things. People are way overcommitted. That's part of your training,
Yeah.
Everyone's way overcommitted, right? Look at the average high school student, his resume to try to get into college. It's ridiculous.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? I would rather see someone just do one thing incredibly well. And that would be like, wow, that's radically different. I like that.
Yes. Yes.
Same thing for adults. You're on this board and that committee and, helicoptering around and you feel like you have no time and you're out of control. And so your energy is going all over the place. And so when you begin to slow down and take control of your mind, then you're also gathering up your energy. Right? So you have a lot more energy. You have a lot more focus, right? Furthermore, when you're radically distracted and untrained, then you're stuck from the chin up, right? You're only able to use your brain, and you're only really using your brain in a very limited manner, kind of left brain linear cause and effect thinking.
Right.
But that's just a small fraction of the potential of the human mind, as we know. Like barely anyone uses much more than 5 or 10% of their capacity. So the training that we've been discussing begins to open up the brain mind and create much more interplay between the right hemispheric contextual mind and the left hemispheric kind of linear cause and effect, strategic brain. And furthermore, you take control, right? You become more connected to witnessing awareness than, and begin to divorce yourself from the thinker. So you'd be able to take control and be able to create more. So instead of just reacting all the time, now you've got the time, the space, and the mental energy to create in your mind.
Yes.
Right? And so what it's like, I think Napoleon Hill says, what the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve.
Yes.
Right. And so so this is part of the 20X. If you can start to create and see a different future built on a much more powerful story that is in alignment with this growing sense of purpose, which is in line with your passion and principles. And that's 20 times bigger and more potent because you're serving 20 times more powerfully. Then guess what? You just activated 20X. But it's not just that. The training also opens up the heart mind. The heart energy is probably thousands, if not 1,000,000 times more powerful than the brain's energy.
Yes.
And if you really want to move a mountain, then put your heart into it. And so especially most men don't really have much connection to their heart, their heart's energy. So we want to open up to our heart mind. And the heart really is a brain, right? We know that now.
Yes.
It has neurons, neurochemicals. It's got, it is a brain. And it has the ability to emit for like tens of feet. I don't even know how far, maybe across the world.
Yes.
And to receive. Whereas this thing we call the skull kind of prevents the brain's, the mind, really powerful minds, can send their mental energy, but most people don't have that power. It kind of stays inside their skull.
Right.
And
we
so
haven't worked that enough.
Yeah, exactly. So you open up to what I call whole mind. And whole mind is the whole body, mind, everything working together. Your intuition centers, everything, your skin, your fascia, your enteric nervous system, your gut mind, your heart mind, right? Your brain, all of it begins to act in harmony. And you have the perceptual ability to perceive the information, the right information. And then you also begin to have the capacity to manipulate time, because time is a construct of that left linear brain. And since you can now operate outside the boundaries of time, right, you can slow things down. Like in the SEALs, we deliberately did this. We had a term for it. We said slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Right. And you watch a SEAL team and it looks like they're moving really fast, but they're actually, in their minds, everything is really slow. This is one of the reasons that we're so good at what we do, because, I have a great story. One of my friends was at Abu Ghraib, and he was augmenting a special forces team, and they were trying to find the CIA agent named Nikki Spain, who had been taken hostage. And they came under fire, and there were like 20 or 30 Taliban, insurgents firing at them, and they were outside, and they were pinned down. Well, the Green Berets were pinned down. They're like popping their head out and taking a shot. And the SEAL, using these skills that I've talked about, basically in his mind slowed time down, and just got up and started like navigating, from cover to cover. And he said it was like he had all the time in the world. He could see that they could see him and they were going to take a shot at him, but he had already made it to cover. And while he was moving, everything was slowing up. He was able to take out, one or two of the enemies while he was moving to cover. And he made his way inside, and he literally killed every single one of those guys. And unfortunately, Nikki Spain he was already killed. That's an example of what I'm talking about. So if you can take control of time, then that gives you 20x potential as well. Mm-hmm. All of this is found not by doing things, but by spending time in the field of potential and becoming more of what you're meant to be, your birthright.
I love that. And I love this whole conversation because, Mark, we look at you as a warrior, you're a Navy SEAL, and, you're not sitting here talking about pushing harder. You're talking about like, hey, it's really about connecting with yourself, connecting with your purpose, connecting with why you're here, connecting with your breath, connecting with your body. It's about really just bringing it all back home and slowing down. So it's not about fighting and resisting. It's really about coming through with this beautiful oneness and cooperation.
Yeah, you come to the knowingness. I said, this is different than knowledge, but the knowingness that this world is a reflective world or a creative world instead of a reactive world, right? Isn't that interesting? The same letters, reactive versus creative.
Yes.
Creative is something that comes from the inside. Reactive has always been externally focused, and you're just kind of reacting.
Yeah.
Being a reactor is a painful existence.
Right? It is.
But being a creator is amazing. So what you create in the inside is going to get reflected back at you. So if you create 20x potential and you can see it and believe it, then the world will reflect it back to you. It doesn't mean you don't take action, but you know the right actions. It'll come to you.
Yeah.
That's 20x potential. And so there's a lot to it, but ultimately, it's to be able to slow down, take control, develop that whole mind experience, find your purpose, aligned with your passion, your principles, develop a powerful vision for that future, and then live that vision in your mind every day, in your heart. And then the world will reflect it back to you eventually.
That's beautiful. Mark, I was just going to ask you for the top 3 things that
I think I just gave them to you.
can implement, but I think you just laid that out.
I laid it there.
Yeah. Mark, you've got so much to share and so much to give to people to transform their lives, whether they're Navy SEALs or corporate executives or, teachers, real estate agents, stay-at-home moms. Tell us where people can learn more about you, learn more about your work. I mean, they certainly want to grab your books, and we'll have all of those links in
Thank
our
you.
show notes. But what's the best place for people to go to learn more?
Well, my personal website, markdivine.com, has a lot of information about books. And I do speaking. I do coaching for some select clients. If someone wants like executive coaching, I usually do 6-month or year-long engagements. I have the Mark Divine Show podcast, which is fun.
Yeah.
And so I get to have conversations like this, but I'm doing more and more kind of teaching in the podcast. So maybe every third or fourth episode will be a guest. I do in-person recording in my studio in Encinitas. So if anyone thinks they'd be an exceptional guest, and they're willing to come to Encinitas, reach out to me, info@markdivine.com. If someone, wants to engage in the training that we're talking about, called Unbeatable Mind, unbeatablemind.com website is a good place. And we have like a simple way to get started. We have a 30-day challenge and a community with all of our courses and content, which is pretty extraordinary. We even have a mental toughness coach certification, which is pretty cool. It's all virtual. Teaches all this stuff.
Awesome. And again, you guys, we will put all of this into the show notes so you have access to it, all of our listeners. Mark, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being able to listen and follow your soul's journey and the impact that it's having on so many lives. So we're thankful to have you here today, and we look forward to continuing to follow you as you proceed on your journey and continue making a difference.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Hoo-yah, as we used to say in the sales.
Oh, yeah. With that, everyone, we'll see you for the next episode. This is Dr. D reminding you to tune into your body, connect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Be sure to grab a copy of the True Wellness Checklist right in the show notes. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you for the next episode.